I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Francesco Melpignano, CEO of Kadena Eco. Francesco, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Hey, Ashton. No, thanks so much for having me. Thank you for taking the time. Really excited to be here.
Likewise, so much to cover in the Kadena ecosystem and Kadena Eco itself, helping out with that ecosystem. So let's get started. Could you first please give a little bit of an explanation about Kadena Eco, how it's helping Kadena, and then we'll dive into the intricacies of the Kadena blockchain and everything that's going on in the ecosystem.
Yeah, of course. So we just spun up Kadena Eco a few months ago. I'm leading the effort as CEO. We brought on Paul Su as CIO, Chief Investment and Innovation Officer, to co-lead the effort. We're here to sort of propel the hypergrowth of the Kadena ecosystem. Right now, builders on Kadena and application dApps, use cases in general, are at a huge inflection point, and we're here ready to provide people with the capital, resources, and anything that they need to build their use cases, applications, and anything they can dream of on the Kadena blockchain.
Incredible. And let's dive into Kadena itself. You know, I only heard of it in late last year, the beginning of this year, but I know that it has huge power and potential, and I'd love to learn more. If you'd explain a little bit about the layer one, how it works, what makes it special, I would love that.
Yeah, of course. I always love giving a bit of background on Kadena for all the new members joining us and just learning about us, and also giving a quick refresh with potentially a different perspective from my end. So Kadena is the only next gen layer one that's innovating on proof of work. We've managed to scale proof of work infinitely. This is because Kadena, we started off with 10 blockchains running concurrently, and we can scale this base layer, as we demonstrated by scaling that up from 10 chains to 20 chains in the summer of 2020. So that means that we've also tested this up to hundreds of thousands of chains. And you can think of each one of these chains sort of in the Kadena chain web algorithm with the same throughput as an Ethereum. So right now we're about 20 times, more, can process 20 times more throughput than Ethereum, and can go to, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times more than that. And Kadena has solved this scalability and sort of the trilemma by innovating purely on the math side. So everything that we do is secured by sort of hashing and proof of work. We figured the last missing piece of what was missing there sort of in scaling a blockchain, which was, how do you get more throughput with the same amount of hash power coming in? And in our system, as you keep on adding blockchains to the underlying system, that means that the block space goes up proportionally there. So we've tested this system to be able to handle any future throughput load that will come our way, because we can keep on adding chains to this system. And building this innovation from the ground up was obviously a lot of work on our end. We're one of the OGs in the space in terms of building and innovating in the layer one. On the layer one side of things, we've also built our own smart contract language called Pact, which is awesome for builders, not only that know the blockchain space, but are new to the blockchain space, because it's very easy to pick up. It approaches being human readable, so anyone with some coding experience up in weeks. We saw from a couple of the companies launching our ecosystem that devs that didn't necessarily have a blockchain background picked up the language very fast and are now innovating, on key components and core stuff like DeFi, how to implement AMMs, so like models like Uniswap and things like DEXs, et cetera, et cetera.
Great. That's very interesting background. And it's hard to visualize when you're like, yeah, it's 10, 20 blockchains all in one using proof of work. But I understand and I trust the math when it's backed by the right cryptography and the smartest mathematicians in the world building the most innovative blockchains. I'd rather trust the math than trust humans. So
yeah, maybe I can give like a more simplified example on how we've scaled the blockchain. So like you can think of it as, like what's happening in Ethereum today is basically like there's a bunch of people waiting in line to order from a counter at McDonald's or something like that. And the more people that are in line, the more you potentially have to pay to get to the front of the line and put in your order to do that. Mm-hmm. So basically how Kadena has scaled this is we just open multiple counters. So then the line can spread out evenly across those counters, and the queue for each of those individual orders becomes shorter. Therefore, that translates to having low gas fees forever.
Very cool. I like that example. Less the McDonald's part. I could skip McDonald's, but the cashier line makes sense. And the other important part that you mentioned there was about the development ecosystem, having a programming language that's easy to use, get developers easily, either ones that are already working in blockchain and Ethereum over to working on Kadena, or just people that know programming but aren't yet in blockchain, right? And obviously the scalability is super important when you have decentralized applications that thousands or millions of people are going to use. But the first step is to have those applications built and actually have people coming to the applications to use them. And I would love to get a little bit more insight on that development ecosystem in terms of how far it is, and are there already dApps running on Kadena?
Yeah, of course. So I think today we're at around 100 community-led projects that have run on Kadena. And this has been, without the support of, the Kadena Eco or other sort of initiatives of this form, because we just formed sort of right at an inflection point of growth for companies building on Kadena. All the core infrastructure is coming out. CADX innovating and providing a DeFi hub for all of Kadena. There's a handful of launch pads coming up, making it easier for builders on Kadena to launch their ideas and do IDOs and fundraise from community, which I want to give a shout out to, because we have one of the strongest, most passionate communities out there. So thanks for all the continued support. And then, just in general, we're just at the tip of the iceberg for what's possible with Pact. It's a totally new programming language, and the possibilities with it are endless, because on Kadena there's also a concept of smart contracts being able to pay for your gas fees, which means gas stations. So that translates to end users not having to pay their own gas, which is very important in both DeFi and NFT and any other vertical, because it actually totally increases the number of applications that are possible on a blockchain. Like for example, in the NFT space, it means that whilst keeping everything decentralized, you can totally abstract away from a user the UX problem of, having to download a wallet, having to connect that wallet. But even before that, the UX problem is seeing someone who's maybe not crypto native at all to an exchange, having to pass KYC, buying this token, potentially sending it to the wrong network, right? Because the addresses look the same. So, I'm assuming that just at that phase, you've lost like good 90 to 99% of mainstream users. And what Kadena, and specifically Kadena Eco, is trying to do is, propel us for mainstream adoption, blockchain for the builders, and, really get to these builders to build these mainstream use cases that will bring everyone over on our end. Our tech isn't limited to people who are crypto native. Our idea is to bring on not only builders from Web 2 who want to transition to Web 3, but also companies that are established in the Web 2 space that may want to have a Web 3 product as part of their offering. And today with EVM blockchains and comparables, that's not possible, because it means that people have to totally re-architect sort of how their app works. So you have a game that runs as an iOS app on a mobile device, and you want to all of a sudden add NFTs or crypto payments. It means that you need to totally restructure your app. And that's why there's a decent amount of friction for these companies to move over to Web3, even though the utility of these, sort of digital assets is quite obvious, especially to that space that kind of gave birth to them, right? So what we're trying to do is close that gap between giving people something that's easy to use, scalable, and decentralized.
Yeah, that's great, Francesco. And I completely understand about the setting up a wallet and having gas for your first transaction, or receiving an Ether token and then realizing you actually need Ether to move it out, and it's stuck in the wallet and it's your first coin ever. And you're like, I'm giving up on crypto because it's too confusing. I've had to explain that 100 times to people. So that's great to hear about that UX and just getting new people in. And especially with NFTs, I found so many people that weren't in finance or cryptocurrencies are now getting involved in the blockchain ecosystem through NFTs, and getting their first NFTs is super important. And I'd love to know more about the NFT side on Kadena as well. Besides having those functionalities, is there anything special or amazing about the NFT ecosystem as it continues to grow on Kadena?
Yeah, of course. So actually, we're just about to launch Marmalade, which is our NFT tooling platform. The whole team's been working very hard on this, and Will, actually one of the co-founders, has been spearheading this effort. So Marmalade it takes advantage of Kadena's novel NFT standard, which takes what's possible in Ethereum today and opens it up to all sorts of use cases that people still haven't thought of right now. Like people kind of have a frame of reference in what's possible to NFTs by what's being sold on NFTs and things that are generating revenue right now. But where we're going to go with NFTs in the future, if the word holds up to what it means, non-fungible pretty much means everything else on the planet, because very few things are fungible. So what we're trying to do is actually make that a reality. So with Kadena, within an NFT, you can actually customize it to do anything that you need. It really does approach having a digital receipt for something that's happening on a blockchain and doing all sorts of things following that. So like one practical use case, so like just as a primer here, one of the roles of Kadena Eco is to take all this theoretical and sort of amazing back-end innovation that's happening on Kadena and build use cases for it to make it practical and real for users out there to then copy and use. So then one practical use case of this novel is to enforce things like royalties, price floors, rights to resell, et cetera, because in an NFT on Kadena using Marmalade, you can actually ingrain all these market conditions and like sort of market decisions of how you resell your NFT into the NFT itself. So then, marketplaces and NFT exchanges on Kadena are actually going to follow a totally decentralized model where, all these royalties, price floors, rights to buyback and things along those lines are not enforced in a centralized way by an exchange, but enforced by the original author of this NFT. So like we're really, really looking forward to pushing the space forward and building really Web3 native applications on top of Kadena that are truly decentralized and don't need to ever use some sort of centralized service or API or anything like that to guarantee sort of the promise of what blockchain was.
Amazing. That's great to hear. And yeah, I've definitely seen a few stories come out recently where this decentralized application is all of a sudden blocking people in a centralized way. And people don't really know, is the whole thing decentralized or just part of it? And most of the time it's a semi-decentralized. So great to see moving in that direction. And yes, very exciting about tokenizing essentially everything in the real world and real world assets that are non-fungible. Looking forward to getting past just digital items and physical collectibles to real world tangible items. So looking forward to that. And as you mentioned, you're helping build out the ecosystem, and this is part of it, is making it a real thing. And so with Kadena Eco, are you funding or looking for startups that are looking to build on Kadena, or are you also incubating new projects? How does that work with growing out the ecosystem?
Yeah, of course. So with Kadena Eco, we're providing infrastructure, funding, and help for builders, whatever their background may be, whether they're already in crypto or whether they're starting out with programming or whether it's their first idea, or people who are, down the rabbit hole of in the Web3 world or coming over from Web2. We're seeing lots of interest from very talented engineers that are not in blockchain yet that want to come over. So like Kadena Eco actually has 5 main initiatives to make this happen. The first one is an accelerator that looks a lot like a Techstars / Y Combinator model. Then we're also going to have an incubator that's going to be a lot more hands-on, where we can actually sort of come in there as a co-founder and help you build your idea, provide you with all the resources you need, and just get hands-on with your project, as much as you need us to be. And then there's also going to be a grants program where we're going to incentivize smaller community-oriented projects, to also look out for those who are maybe just diving into the crypto space or have a new idea and may not be ready to go into an accelerator or an incubator or something along those lines. Then we also are going to have an R&D arm, which is main purpose is going to be to showcase to the world everything that's happening on the sort of theoretical back-end innovation at Kadena, and build that into practical use cases that we'll look at and start to iterate on and make these things a reality. And the last portion is a traditional venture capital fund, where we'll be providing significant amounts of capital that are needed to scale companies into the mainstream. And the fund is going to be focused on investing on the Kadena ecosystem and companies around Kadena infrastructure and things along those lines. But really, like with these 5 initiatives, we'd be covering builders that want to come to Kadena, in whichever stage they may be at with their idea or project.
Amazing, Francesco, covering all the bases. And now for startups that are already in crypto, or just any startups or people that want to help contribute to the ecosystem, what is the best way to reach out and to get involved in Kadena Eco?
Yeah, as a first place, head over to the Kadena Medium. One of the latest articles is on Kadena Eco. It will give you a great primer on what I've been talking about today and more. You can follow the links in there to get in contact with us. Also, feel free to follow Kadena on Twitter. We've got some fun community members supporting us out there. So it's not just about information. There's a lot more. We're looking forward to keep on building this team on Kadena Eco and bringing on more and more partners and team members.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Francesco. I will leave those links for the startups and for people just interested in learning more about Kadena and Kadena Eco in the description box below. All the best with everything going on. There's so many different faucets of growing, and I know it's going quickly. So props to your team for keeping up on all of that, and all the best with Kadena Eco moving forward. And let's follow up in the near future.
Thank you, Ashton. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on.